Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story in which some drunk Karen gets way too entitled over a nearly empty drink. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. Entitled woman attacks me because her drink was thrown away. I've been working bars since I was 18, and there's a common rule of thumb. Don't leave your drinks unattended. If you do, they get collected. One night, it was closing time, last orders had been called, the bar was shut down, and the bouncers were asking people to drink up and leave. Our glass collector found a table with a glass that had just a drip of a drink left. They asked the people at the table if the drink was finished, and they said yes. So the glass collector did their job and put the glass in the glass wash. I was sweeping the floor when the glass collector told me that a woman at the end of the bar was demanding to know where her drink was and insisted it be replaced. Turns out the glass with the drip left was hers. It was 2 a.m., the bar was closed, restock was done, and it was time for people to leave. Given the glass collector had been told the drink was finished, I said we wouldn't replace it. Even without approval, the rule is clear. If a drink is left unattended, it gets collected. The woman stormed behind the bar to where I was sweeping and demanded I pour her another drink because she had paid for it and wasn't finished. I explained that there was only a drip left and that she had left it unattended. I also emphasized the importance of not leaving drinks unattended. I told her that even if the bar were still open, she'd still have to pay for another drink. But since the bar was closed and the tills were already cashed up, there was nothing I could do. I calmly explained she wouldn't get a replacement and needed to leave the bar area, as it goes against our licensing rules. Being drunk, she got irate, insisting that as a customer, she was always right. I said I had to follow rules and that she needed to go before the bouncers forcibly removed her. She didn't take this well and got in my face, shouting profanities and demanding a free drink. I'd had enough and called a bouncer to remove her from behind the bar. When she saw the bouncer coming, she lunged at me with all her force. I'm small but have self-defense training, so I managed to lock her in place on the floor while the bouncers got her up and out of the bar. She was still flailing and screaming like a toddler denied a toy, and she managed to scratch my face with her nails. She was barred on the spot for attacking a staff member and reported to the police. They charged her with assault, as it was all caught on security cameras. It still baffles me how entitled this woman acted over a drip of a drink. It's been a while since it happened, but it still gives me a bit of anxiety. So I always make sure the latch door is locked when we're closing up for the night. Moral of the story, which should always be a given, when you're out drinking, please don't leave your drinks unattended. Side note, we have posters on many walls and behind the bar stating that unattended drinks will be collected. Sure sounds like she's more than an occasional drunk. But then many drunks are like heat-seeking missiles. They can become excessively focused on a minute detail and unwilling to let go. I wouldn't last 5 minutes with a drunk customer. And our second story. Won another lawsuit against a guy who tried to force me out of business. Last year, I opened a liquor store with my girlfriend, now fiance, in my hometown. The nearby city had a few liquor stores run by a city councilman who controls who gets liquor licenses in said city. With me being 40 minutes away, he was losing business and offered to buy my store. I refused, and instead he tried to sue me for libel. His attempted for around half a year continued to sue me, my business, or anything else he could until it was thrown out with contempt. Fortunately, I was able to get my lawyer to take the case pro bono, so I didn't get buried in legal fees as the guy intended. My lawyer and I then began to file suit against the guy. So that's where we left off a while ago. As of now, the case is over and I can talk about it. We filed the complaint about a month after the last case against me was dismissed. What we filed for was multiple accounts of malicious misuse of due process. After filing the complaint, we needed to serve papers to the guy. Someone, I don't know who, must have told him because he dodged getting served for multiple weeks. The only reason the process server was able to serve him was because there was a meeting to approve the transfer of a liquor license between two businesses in the city. Ironic. He and his lawyers answered the complaint and said everything in the complaint and the summons was a deliberate misrepresentation of the facts, None of the suits filed against me were in any way malicious, but given that the only thing that changed between most of the suits was the named defendant, kind of disproves that. He then went on to say that this current suit was simply a move by me to get revenge on him for trying to protect his business. Pretty much the entire answer was him just saying, "No, you." After that, we moved into discovery, which I'll talk about in a minute. Through the discovery process, there were a couple of motions for dismissal by the defendant's counsel. The first was just a general, all the facts are wrong, and this is a lawsuit filed in bad faith. This was immediately thrown out by the judge because the 4 suits filed back-to-back with only the defendant being changed indicate that this was potentially a malicious lawsuit. The second motion was that these weren't malicious because the defendants were different. Effectively, the argument is if the same defendant, then it would be a malicious suit, but because the defendant kept getting changed from suit to suit, that means there was a legitimate complaint that they were trying to get solved, which technically would be legal, and I would have no standing. However, the judge acknowledged that while the argument is legally sound if you simply look at the wording of the law, it completely violates the spirit that it was written in, and the actions of the defendant only serve to confirm that the previous lawsuits were filed in bad faith. So then the motion was tossed out of court. Later, during discovery, the defendant filed for a venue change. Seems how we filed in my local court, they argued that the local jury would be biased towards me. This was dismissed because they forgot to ask for a jury trial. We were perfectly fine with proceeding with a bench trial, so we didn't ask for a jury. The judge decided that because they didn't request a jury, a venue change would not offer any significant change in the trial. They used that decision and some history I have with the same judge to appeal to the state court to dismiss the case. They refused. So back to discovery. The whole process was extremely slow, and we were still in the middle of discovery when we decided to settle. We'd received multiple settlement offers up to that point and rejected all of them, but at the end of November, the defendant decided to fire the manager of one of his businesses. The former manager then decided to turn over some text messages to the court. You see, we requested all communication about the malicious filings from last year that the defendant had made. That included text messages. That showed neither counsel nor the defendant did the proper diligence to comply with discovery. The defense was able to get that text removed from the evidence. While the text might not have been able to be used as evidence if we had proceeded to trial, you can't erase that you hid evidence from the judge's memory. They don't tend to take that well. With this coming to light and the chicanery that the defendant had been pulling, the judge was just over it at this point. Our lawyers had to meet with the judge at the very beginning of this month, December, where the defense's counsel was reprimanded. After this, the defendant offered a really big settlement. After my fiancé and I discussed it, we decided to accept the offer. Our wedding's getting close, and frankly, we don't want to deal with court stuff anymore. The whole trial process was still months away, and there wasn't any guarantee that we would have gotten any more money. Unfortunately, it's not the nuclear revenge I and my fiancé, and possibly you, were hoping for. Although the settlement after I settled the contingency pay for my lawyer did repay the remainder of my loan, we'll have a nice chunk of money left over. Congratulations on your victory. Most people don't have the guts to stand up against high-maintenance competitors. And our last story. Truck owner blocks disabled person's driveway. I live in a neighborhood in a city of 3 million people, a few blocks from a busy street. There's enough parking, but inconsiderate parking is common. At 6:45 p.m., I want to leave to buy groceries before a snowstorm that's coming the next day, but my driveway is fully blocked by a truck. I have a neurological disorder and am always extremely physically and mentally exhausted, but especially at the end of the day. I'm disabled and unable to work. This is a profound inconvenience. My partner and I deliberate reporting the truck. We typically wait or not call at all, but with snow coming and tow trucks busy and maybe unavailable the next day, we want the truck gone soon. We expect a delay, and we buffer for that since we learned the tow company does not tow after 11 p.m. tonight. I have good reason for needing access to his car. I'm responsible for managing a property for my mom and caring for my wife's elderly parents. Plus, my wife is pregnant, so I want to be able to take her to the hospital if necessary. Also, I want emergency vehicles to be able to access our driveway if something happens. I assume that anyone in our neighborhood would be familiar enough and considerate enough not to block a driveway. I assume it's someone out at nearby bar. I checked with one next-door neighbor who says it isn't his. The other next-door neighbor's lights are off, and they have young kids, so I don't want to bother them. My Reddit search of old posts tells me that people in my city would absolutely immediately tow someone blocking their driveway, so I feel comfortable calling in the car. 90 minutes later, it had been ticketed and towed. My friends say I absolutely am not responsible for locating the driver, seeing as we live in a city, and anyone who would block a driveway is the scum of the earth. My neighbor, who lives diagonally across the street, however, is livid that I did not notice his dinner party and lights. He was upset that we called for the tow at all because our driveway wasn't blocked for that long and accused us of not using the car the next day. He apologized for some of this, but still doesn't understand how I didn't see his party and knock. His friend was the driver. Edit, the driver claims to have made a mistake and didn't block my driveway intentionally. I think he's appropriately ashamed and not an a-hole. He says there were cars clustered around his house. I noticed cars parked everywhere. I didn't notice his lights. He lives in an elevated triplex house. I've never been inside and don't know which floors are his. He thinks it's crazy I didn't go door to door to find his friend. He says he polled many other neighbors about my behavior, finding they would go door to door knocking to find the driver. I'm not a very social person, and knocking on everyone's door to track down the person is alien to me. Also, I don't want to inconvenience them for one person's mistake. It inconveniences me when people knock on my door. My dog gets anxious, and it's a whole process getting her to settle down, and that wakes up my kid too. You use sound judgment and are definitely not responsible for canvassing an entire block or neighbor to save some dude who acted illegally, endangering you from themselves. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.